Right on. Thank you very much. My name is Ryan Milne. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Hey, Ron.
Glad to see everybody. Yeah, Josh, thanks for inviting me to do this. I'll tell you, I'm all fired up. I'm all excited. It gives me an excuse to talk about, Alcoholics Anonymous. It gives me an excuse to talk about the big book and talk from the big book. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I will say for the foundation meeting, before I get into it, if you guys have big books, it might be best. The meeting might go better if you have them in front of you there. I'm going to be saying a bunch of page numbers and reading out of the book and then talking about it a little bit. And, the meeting might be smoother if you got your book in front of you. I'd recommend it. What else do I say before I start? My sobriety date is November 13th, 2006. My home group is Primary Purpose Group, Webster, New York. We meet on Zoom at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday mornings. Maybe Risa will be cool and put those numbers in the chat for us there. Yeah, right on. Josh, thanks again for asking me. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see so many friends here. This is awesome. So yeah, let's get on with it. This is the foundation meeting. And, I'll start first by talking about kind of the purpose of the foundation meeting. It's important. It's basically need to know information. It's, AA 101 if you want, or, intro to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to spend a lot of time tonight talking about alcoholism, and I'm going to spend some time talking about AA's plan of action, plan of recovery from alcoholism. How I'm going to talk about, what made me so sick and how did I get well, basically. Because, we hear lots of things in AA meetings that are not necessarily AA. Some people call the foundation meeting a Mythbusters kind of thing. And the thing with the AA meetings is anybody can pretty much come to an AA meeting and pretty much say anything they want, right? Like there's no AA police, and that's a good thing, obviously, but what kind of happens is, somebody comes, they hear something from somewhere else and they come to the AA meeting and they say it and it sounds good, right? It sounds like really cool. So somebody else, they hear it again and they hear it again. And it's kind of like this oral tradition, right? And, that kind of gets spread. And as the years go by, we kind of have gathered all this stuff we hear in meetings that isn't necessarily Alcoholics Anonymous, doesn't come from our program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I kind of have these things separated into two different categories. The first one I find less damaging. You hear things like go to 90 meetings in 90 days, or don't get in a relationship for the first year, or change people, places, and things, right? We hear that stuff in AA meetings all the time. And it could be good advice, you know what I mean? It could be cool. It's not from our program. Our program doesn't really say any of that stuff. So it's cool. If you want to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, like it's probably not, do your thing. You know what I'm saying? It's just not what our program suggests. In fact, when our program, came about, these guys and women were going to one meeting a week, usually, one meeting a week. And the rest of the time was spent trying to deepen their relationship with their higher power and try to carry the message to sick and suffering alcoholics. So, that stuff, I'm not too passionate about it, whatever, but there's this whole other kind of stuff that we hear in AA meetings that, I think could possibly be deadly, and the stuff, honestly, it comes from a good place. People mean well. People are sharing what they've heard and what they were taught, and they mean well. They're trying to help. They're not like trying to hurt anybody. But you hear things like, put the plug in the jug. Play the tape all the way through before you drink. Remember the worst before the first. Or if somebody relapses, you might hear him like, oh, he didn't want it enough, something like that, and my absolute favorite or least favorite, however you want to say it, is I woke up this morning and chose not to drink. all this stuff here, it just shows an absolute lack of understanding of the disease of alcoholism, of what alcoholism is. So tonight we're going to talk about some of that stuff. I'll get on to the book here. And when I talk about the book, I'm referring to Alcoholics Anonymous. This is the 4th edition that I'll be working on. And that's the page numbers I'll be giving you is out of the 4th edition. I'm going to start with the preface, which is on Roman numeral XI, or Roman numeral 11. And I'm going to go to the second paragraph down. It says, because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. The reason I like to start with this is because it's important we understand this book is a textbook, okay? This is our program of recovery, and this is a textbook. This book is not to be read like a novel. I didn't know that. I'll say, I remember when I was in rehab, AA members were coming in talking and saying, read the book, read the book. So somebody gave me a book. So I read the book, and it did me no good. I guess it was fine, whatever, but it did me no good. It all just went over my head, So if I'm treating this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, like a textbook, that's where the real, value is going to come from, I guess. Let's go ahead to the forward to the first edition, which is on Roman numeral 8, XIII. And I'm going to start right at the top there. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. So they're throwing, you notice I announce myself as a recovered alcoholic. It says that I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Okay. And we're going to get into that. That's the illness of alcoholism is of mind and body. And I'm not suffering from that anymore. So I have recovered from that. I'm not cured. I am still an alcoholic. If I put alcohol in my body, all bets are off. I'll be off and running. It'll be a nightmare. Guaranteed. No question. My track record proves that. But as I sit here today, I'm not drinking. I'm not thinking about drinking. For me, that problem has been removed. I am recovered. I am free from the bondage of alcohol. And they use that word here. And then it's going to say, to show us how they recovered, the authors of this book, is the main purpose of the book. So that's why they wrote this book. Okay. All right. Let's talk about alcoholism. Let's go on to page 30, not Roman numeral 30, regular old 30. And let's see what they say there. So I'm at the second paragraph down. It says, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. Okay, that's awesome, but we need to learn what an alcoholic is before we can do that. They're asking me to concede deep inside, in my soul, in my heart, that I am an alcoholic. But I can't say yes or no to that until I understand what an alcoholic is. All right, so we're going to break alcoholism into a few different topics, I guess we're going to talk about the physical and the mental. But before I can do that, I do want to talk about what alcoholism is not. All right. I had different ideas when I came to AA about what an alcoholic was and what alcoholism is. So alcoholism does not mean we are weak-willed. It does not mean. This is one that got me. To be an alcoholic, one does not necessarily have to drink all the time. Okay. Drinking, around the clock. I did not do that. That's not my story. That's not my experience. You hear the cat. Some people do. A lot of alcoholics do, right? Friends with a lot of people, sponsor guys, drank vodka 24/7 around the clock, bottle stashed under the bed. I did not do that. That does not mean I'm not an alcoholic. Also, to be an alcoholic does not mean we've gone to jail or prison or have been homeless or have had, multiple DWIs. No specific consequence makes you an alcoholic. Okay. I mean, there's in our meetings, there's a lot of people who, possibly got that second DWI within 10 years. That's a felony in New York anyways, and they come to AA meetings. That does not necessarily mean they're alcoholic. Maybe they're just idiots. Maybe they just made bad choices. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that they're alcoholic. So no specific consequence means I'm alcoholic. That's important. All right, let's talk about the physical aspect here. Let's go back to Roman numeral 28. XXVIII. All right, so I'm at the first full paragraph there, and this is written by Dr. Silkworth, the doctor that helped Bill Wilson get sober. And he says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. All right, so let's talk about that real quick here. So they're telling us that the action of alcohol, when I drink alcohol, what happens, the action is a manifestation of an allergy. Okay. And how that allergy manifests, how that allergy shows up is a craving for more alcohol. Okay. So like this makes sense in hindsight, but while I was drinking, I did not know, I was not conscious or aware that I was craving more alcohol as I'm drinking alcohol. You know what I'm saying? It just seemed to me at the time like I was having fun. I was having a good night. I didn't want the party to stop. Like that's how it seemed in my head. It didn't seem like, and it felt like I was the one making the choices. It felt like, after the third or fourth drink, it felt like a good idea to have a fifth drink. And after the 10th drink, when everybody else wanted to go home, it felt like, that's not what I want to do. I want to keep partying, So I felt like I was making these choices as I was going. But, our program is going to tell us it's a craving beyond my mental control. So even though I thought I was making these choices and making these decisions, it was beyond my willpower, beyond my control. And the alcohol was more powerful than I was. And there were other times, I'll say briefly, where I would make a commitment to myself to go out and only have a certain amount of drinks. I never really said one or even two, you know what I'm saying? Like that just sounded stupid. Like I wasn't going to do that pretty much, but there was times when I would say, all right, like you could have 3 drinks, you'd be good with 3 drinks, and what would happen somewhere along during that second drink, or maybe into the third one, the idea would say, you don't need to go to bed as quick as you were planning on. You could have another one, and it made it seem like it didn't look like a craving. It looked like I'm just changing my mind and I'm having fun and I want to keep drinking. That's all that really seemed like to me. So we flip over to page 30, Roman numeral 30, XXX. Down towards the bottom there, the doctor's going to kind of back this up again. He's going to say, they cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. Okay, so this is important. This only alcoholics suffer this craving on this level. Non-alcoholics, social drinkers, hard drinkers, other people can really be enjoying themselves and, just having fun and feel like getting drunk that night. It's okay. But there's a craving that's happening in the alcoholic that is only experienced by the alcoholic. It says that sets us apart as a distinct entity. I always laugh about this. When I came to AA, I remember my sponsor, I said, man, my whole life, I always felt different. He goes, you are. It was great for me. It was like, oh, good. And, through Alcoholics Anonymous, I've kind of found my people, I guess. Let's skip over to page 22, regular numbers 22. And I'm going to be right at the bottom of the page there. It says, we're equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. All right. So, I obviously know non-alcoholics and family members and other people in my life who are not alcoholic. And, I won't lie, I watch them drink. Okay. I'll watch these normies drink sometimes, and I can watch somebody, basically, drink a glass of wine and then, maybe somewhere in the second glass of wine, they might push that drink aside and they're done. What's happening to them is they are starting to feel it and they are starting to get this kind of out of control feeling, and their brain tells them, shut it down. That's it. You're good. Shut it down. And for me, for the alcoholic, we're opposite from that. When I'm onto my second or third drink, something happens in there that I come alive. I come awake. My wiring says, let's go. I start to feel almost like I'm in control. And I love that feeling. I live for that feeling. It was just phenomenal. And I chased that feeling tremendously, for quite a while there. So basically, that's what happens when I drink. When the alcoholic drinks, we lose control over how much we drink and we crave more, and that keeps going on and on. But if that's the only problem, there's a very simple solution. We can go back to, I told you I'm bouncing around here. We can go back to Roman numeral 30, XXX, and see what the doctor says about that. I'm at the bottom of the page. It says, the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. So sweet. I drink too much when I drink. Drinking causes me all kinds of consequences. I get in trouble when I drink. I can't control how much I drink when I drink. So there's a simple answer: abstinence. Don't drink. And that would be all fine and good. But let's go back to 22 here, or actually 23, excuse me. And I'm at the first full paragraph on 23. It says, these observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. And now we're starting to get into it. This is the crux of it. If drinking's the problem, I could stop drinking and live happily ever after. But that's not my story. You know, that's not what happens to the real alcoholic when they stop drinking. When we're separated from alcohol, you know, it seemed like things would get better. It seemed like drinking was the problem. I had all these people in my life tell me, Ryan, you got to quit drinking. You got to quit drinking. The drinking's killing you. You got to quit drinking. And it seemed like that's logical. That made sense. But what would happen to me as I would quit drinking, I actually in some ways, I got worse, not better. You know, I actually felt more horrible as time went by not drinking. And it wasn't logical. It didn't make sense. You know, I couldn't really figure that out. You know, I remember I've heard a speaker talk about, you know, when he would quit drinking, it seemed like someone would sneak in his bedroom at night and put a spring in his gut. And as time would go by, as those days would turn to weeks, it was like somebody was just tightening that spring. And eventually I relate to that. Eventually I just need relief. I need relief. I don't know how to do sober. I don't know how to do abstinence. Let's go on to page 30 here. And I'm right at the top of the page here. One of my favorite paragraphs. Love this. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. So, you know, we often talk about the mental obsession in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I kind of had this a little twisted. You know, I kind of thought the mental obsession was like me sitting in the corner of my room thinking, oh, I got to drink. I need to drink. And, you know, that does happen. That is a thing. You know, that does happen from time to time. But the great obsession really is this idea that I have in my mind that somehow, someday, I will be able to control and enjoy my drinking at the same time. And, you know, basically what I was chasing that, you know, those mid-teenage years when I first started drinking, you know, it was awesome. It was awesome. And I had no consequences. I was just a fun party all the time. And it was all good, you know, and my mind wanted that to go back to that so bad that I was delusional that as an adult, I would be able to do that. I kind of had this idea like, well, you know, I'm older now, or I'm more grown up now, or I got a job now, or whatever it is. Now I'll be able to drink, you know, the way I want to, you know, and, you know, that's the great obsession of every abnormal drinker there. Let's go to 24. And you'll see on 24, there's some italicized writing or squiggly writing, as some of us like to call it there. I'm going to go like halfway into that italicized writing there. It says, we are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. And this is what it looks like. I mean, it looks like some time goes by. I'm absolutely miserable. And, you know, I I've been telling myself the thought of a drink will come, and I'll say, no, you're not drinking. No, you're not drinking. And I'm able to do that and keep myself sober for a little while. I have success with that. Play the tape all the way through. That worked for me until it didn't, because it says at certain times I'm not going to be able, my mind will not allow me to bring into my consciousness the humiliation and the suffering that comes when I start drinking. I have no defense, and that time will come. And the thing with me is like, I can keep myself sober, 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100 times, maybe, but that time will come for me sooner or later. Well, I will convince myself this time, somehow, some way, this time will be different. And I'm off and running again. And I've told myself so many lies about this over and over. Usually it's like, look, you just went 2 months without drinking. You could stop if you have to. You just proved it, no liquor. It's the liquor that gets you. Just the beer. Just do the beer, And I would tell myself stuff like that. And, I always would end up at the same exact place. Everything would basically be the same, I'm going to continue on that same, the next paragraph there. The almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. There is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting a hand on a hot stove. I love this analogy, the hot stove. So, anybody who's done that as a kid or a grown up, if you've touched the hot stove, that hurts, right? And you're not going to, your brain is going to tell you and stop you from doing that again, basically. When you see that hot stove, your brain tells you, whoa, that's going to hurt, stay away. But not so with alcohol. Even though I burned my life to the ground over and over and over, I kept going back. But the reason for that is alcohol did something for me that putting my hand on a hot stove did not do. Let me tell you, if putting my hand on a hot stove made me feel the way alcohol made me feel, I probably have some burnt, calloused hands right here. You know what I mean? Alcohol did something absolutely tremendously magical for me. In fact, let's flip ahead. I like going through this. Let's flip ahead to 83. We refer to these as the 9th step promises. So these promises will come true. They're telling us this is what our life will look like once we get to the 9th step and we start making amends. But if I look at, especially in the early days, in the beginning of my drinking, if I start to think of what alcohol did for me when I started drinking, this is very, very spot on. So I'm at the very bottom of 83 there. When I started drinking, we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Yep. When I started drinking, especially in the early days, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. That is what alcohol did for me. I comprehended the word serenity and I finally had some peace. When I first started drinking, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. When I started drinking, I love to tell people things and share my opinions on every topic ever. When I started drinking, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Check. When I started drinking, I would lose interest in selfish things, gain interest in my fellows. I finally felt connected to you. I finally felt connected to other people. When I started drinking, my whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. This to me is a perfect example of what alcohol does for me. And that's why I kept putting my hand on that hot stove over and over and over, because of this magic that happened. Alcohol was not my problem. Alcohol really was my solution. My solution to life was alcohol. And that's the reason why right there. Let's jump to 34 real quick. Towards the bottom third of the page there, it says, many of us felt we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it, this utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. And that's because of what I just read. I mean, that's because of what alcohol did for me. I was able to be connected to you. I was able to be part of life. And because of that, no matter how much damage alcohol was causing me, I still continued to go back to it. Let's jump. I'm bouncing around a little bit. Let's go to 24. At the very bottom of 24, it says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. You know, that would have made no sense to me when I was drinking. That really wouldn't, because I just couldn't fathom if I really needed to stop forever. I just always had in the back of my head that I would be able to do that. I would be successful. I was delusional. I was not looking at the truth and the facts of my life. I was basically just looking at this great obsession. Somehow, someday, I will control and enjoy my drinking. And that was the way I was really thinking about it. I'm going to skip to 37. Here's the first time we're going to use this word. I'm at the top of 37. It says, whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? So it's really spot on. It is a form of insanity. It's alcoholic insanity. I end up drinking against my will. I have promised myself, I have, sworn up and down, I'm done. And after a few days, weeks, or months, I pick it up once again. I give in once again. It's alcoholic insanity. We keep doing it, basically. Let's go to 38, flip over the page there. And towards the bottom of the page, about 2/3 down the page there, it's going to say, however intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we've been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? This is another one that messed with me. I was successful in licking other habits. I could make these commitments to myself and I could stick with them. So I thought that drinking was going to be the same thing. It seemed logical. It seemed to make sense, but that was not the case. That proved to be the case. I'm going to keep reading here. Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly don't intend to. Thanks for the information. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize to smash home upon our alcoholic readers, as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. How important do you think they want us to know that information there? They want to smash it home to us, right? And this is an important thing here. That's the bad news, really. Everything we've talked about so far tonight, all this physical, mental stuff, we can know all this and it still won't help us. It still will not keep me sober forever. I've proved that. We'll go to 43 here. The very bottom, great little paragraph here. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Let me talk about that real briefly there. At certain times. So I do have an effective mental defense against the first drink sometimes. I'll even say most times. But at certain times, I have no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. That means the AA meeting, my sponsor, my wife, my kids, my boss, no other human power can provide that defense. My defense must come from a higher power. All right, let's go to 40. Let's flip the page to 44 here. And they're going to basically summarize everything I've just talked about here. Right towards the top of the page. I'm just skipping the first sentence here, but it says, we hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you can't quit entirely, or when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. That's two simple questions there. Two simple questions that we can honestly ask ourselves to diagnose ourselves here. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. See how we're doing on time here. I'm going to move ahead here. Let's talk about some solution. We hit the problem pretty good there, but let's talk about some solution. Let's go to page 25. Let's go to page 25. And on the first full paragraph there, you'll see the italicized writing there. It says, there is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-seeking, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. Somebody told me once at a book study that what if that period was moved over 5 words and it would say, there is a solution almost none of us liked. I love that because, working this program is not necessarily a fun time, especially in the beginning. I mean, this is some work. This is some work. And I, as an alcoholic, do not like work, it's important here, the solution. I'm going to keep reading here, but it's important we know this solution that Alcoholics Anonymous gives us. It basically, the steps get us hooked up to a power greater than ourselves. The steps don't really show us how to stop drinking. There's nowhere in our book that says, okay, stop drinking now. It just doesn't work like that. And we get hooked up to a power greater than ourselves. And it's almost a byproduct of that is we don't drink anymore. The obsession to drink's removed. And that's powerful. Talking about solution, you can come with me if you want. I'm just going to read one little line on page 60, our 12th step. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So they're telling us right there, that's our solution. That's our program. A spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Let's go to 45. 45, I'm at the first full paragraph there. Some powerful stuff here. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we to find that power, this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. So that's beautiful. It doesn't tell me right there. It tells me lack of power is my dilemma. It doesn't tell me, lack of, doesn't tell me alcohol is my dilemma, which is what I thought. It's telling me lack of power is my dilemma because I do not have the power in myself to not pick up that first drink. And my track record shows that. And I would challenge everybody here, to look at your own track record. Do you have the power within yourself to not pick up that first drink? And if so, it might be great news. You might not need Alcoholics Anonymous. It might be awesome if you have that power in yourself. I do not. My track record showed that. So, some people get a little funny here because, you feel like we're trying to trick you. Power greater than yourself. It was like, oh, we know you're talking about God and we don't want to hear it, whatever. So let's see what the book tells about that. Let's flip the page to 46, and I'm at the last full paragraph there. It says, much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. This is so important here. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a cult. Alcoholics Anonymous, honestly, our program does not care what you believe in. You can have any higher power you want as long as it's spiritual in nature. Okay, so there's no religion here, and you can basically have any power you want, any higher power you want. It's telling you right there, pretty clear cut. Flip over to 47. Now flip. It's just right over across the page on 47 there. It says, when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. So they're basically using God as an almost generic term in this book. It's a convenient word that hopefully works for everybody, and God can mean to you whatever it needs to mean to you. That's the way they're using it in this book here. This applies too to other spiritual expressions, which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. And it's just that clear right there. We'll go down. I'm still on 47 here. We'll go down to the next paragraph. And sometimes this is referred to as the second step question. It says we needed to ask ourselves one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe in a power greater than myself? That's a yes or no question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe? As soon as a man can say he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. So I think what they're telling me here is the willingness is the important part. All right. So that's what I got on the second step for now. I'm going to read one line off 64 because, this is kind of set us up to move into the third step. And on 64 is just one line. It says, our liquor was but a symptom. We had to get down to causes and conditions. So we kind of found that out already. And now we're going to find out through our program how we actually do that. Let's go to 62 here. And, these next couple of paragraphs are possibly the most powerful, amazing, lines in our book. It's absolutely where it's at. I'm at the first full paragraph there. It says selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our troubles. This was a total shift for me. Okay. To have my sponsor read this with me and tell me that, it was surprising. It was baffling. I thought it seemed the alcohol was the root of my trouble. It seemed like that was the real root of it all. But really they're telling me here my selfishness and self-centeredness is. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. I'm learning here. They're telling me right here, it's time for Ryan to stop being the victim. It's time for Ryan to start looking at all of my past behaviors in a new light. Okay. It says, so our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. Again, it's basically telling me it's my fault. It's my fault. I made a mess of my life. I really did. I was sick, no doubt. But it's really my own fault. My troubles are of my own making. They arise out of ourselves. I love that. I always picture like I'm like a volcano of troubles, they're arising out of myself. And the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. So this stuff right here, I could talk for a whole hour on this right here. I'm not going to, don't worry. But this stuff is so huge. And what it's doing here is shifting the way I'm looking at my life and hopefully the world. It is setting me up to get ready to get into steps 4 through 9. It's getting me in the mindset that I need to be successful working steps 4 through 9. If you want to go to 58, that's where it says the steps, where the steps are listed, all except 12. And we can see step 4 made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So now with that mentality that the troubles are of my own making, that my selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my trouble. Now I'm able to take my sponsor's directions out of the book here, and I'm able to go do an inventory of my life and go learn some truths about myself pretty much. The 5th step, I'm going to take that information that I've worked on, and I'm going to take that to God and to my sponsor. And, hopefully my sponsor is experienced enough. His role there for that is going to be to help me find my own mistakes in all of this inventory stuff that I've written down, all my resentments, my fears, and my conduct. And I'm going to be, reading this stuff to my sponsor, and he's going to be helping me see if I can't see where my mistakes are. He's going to be helping me see that. Now, when I'm done with that, I'm going to have some mixed feelings, and I'm going to have a whole list of my mistakes, right? They might want to call them shortcomings or character defects, sins. The book calls them a whole bunch of different things there, but they're basically my mistakes and the mess that I've made. And I get to ask myself, like, what do I find objectionable? That's the 6th step. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So I'm able to see what's objectionable, and I become willing at that point to change, to have God remove that stuff for me. The 7th step is a simple prayer that actually, when I'm ready, I'm asking God to take all of me. it says good and bad. I cannot determine, the good and the bad. My justifications don't let me do that pretty much. So I'm going to offer all of myself to God. And once I do that, I'm going to make a list of all persons I've harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. This 8-step often gets kind of overlooked a little bit here. It's a very, very, very important step. I used to call it an organizational step, and I was way wrong. This is all about willingness to clean up the past. And it's important that I become willing for the 9th step when I actually go out there and actually start to clean this stuff up. Because the 9th step says, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So the 9th step, I'm actually going to go to people I have harmed in my life, and I'm going to try to right those wrongs. I'm going to admit my mistakes, and I'm going to try to right those wrongs. Steps 10, 11, and 12, we refer to as AA's relapse prevention plan. It's basically my instructions for the rest of my life, steps 10, 11, and 12. It's basically continuing and growing and carrying this message to other alcoholics. I mean, our book, I'm not going to go into it now, but our book spends a lot of time explaining the importance of carrying this message. Once I'm well, once I'm recovered, I'm able to, to carry this message and to help other people. And let me jump ahead real quick here to tell you what a recovered alcoholic looks like. These we refer to as the 10th step promises. So I'm at the bottom of 84 here. It says, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. So this is by the time I get to the 10th step here. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. There's that hot stove reference that I think of there. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. For a guy like me who was drinking the way I was drinking and could not stay stopped, for these promises to come true in my life is an absolute miracle. It's an absolute miracle. And for a guy like me, it's just absolutely beautiful. I'll close with this. I like to talk about this here, at the very bottom of 95, at the very bottom of 95, this chapter is talking about working with others, and it's talking about explaining our program of action to a new guy, a suffering alcoholic, right? And we're sitting there, and then it says, if he thinks he can do the job in some other way, or prefers some other spiritual approach, encourage him to follow his own conscience. It's okay if they don't want to, work these 12 steps. We have no monopoly on God. We merely have an approach that worked with us. We are not a cult. We have something that has worked with us. I have my experience. I was sick. I came to AA. I worked the 12 steps and I got well. And that's an experience that I have, and I can pass that along. But if somebody doesn't want it, encourage him to try another approach. That's what our program's telling us to do. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I'm Ryan Milne, recovered alcoholic.